Hey folks, Lewis here from the Alliance Pro Wrestling Network. Thank you for joining me today, and you are in for an absolute treat because it's not every day that I'm able to get a legend in the sport of professional wrestling on my show. But today is one of those days, as I had the privilege and the honor of speaking with a man that I grew up watching since the mid-'80s, since the beginning, the one and only, the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff. You know, it's like I said, it's not every day you get to sit down with a legend, and I am very, very thankful and very, very fortunate that Nikita Koloff gave me some time, and it was just a dream come true. And it was a spectacular interview. Words can't describe how much I enjoy doing it. So, with that said, I want to say that my interview with the legend, the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, happens right now. Hello and welcome to the Alliance Pro Wrestling Network. This is the Alliance Pro Wrestling Interview. I'm your host, Lewis Carlin, and what can I say today? Every so often when you're doing these interviews, you get to speak to someone that's you grew up watching, and they're an absolute legend in the sport of professional wrestling. And today is one of those days because I am absolutely thrilled and very happy to welcome the one and only, the legendary Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff. Nikita, welcome to the show, sir.
My brother, it's just an honor and a privilege to be with you. I appreciate you having me on, and good day to you and all the wonderful listeners out there.
Thank you. I just got to say, I know I said it briefly before I hit record, but I've been a fan of yours since the beginning, and I grew up watching you in the '80s. And we're going to be talking about Magnum TA, and I'll ask you about Ric Flair, but definite legend. It's an absolute honor to be speaking to you right now, sir.
Well, I'm appreciative, and I appreciate that wonderful introduction, and look forward to sharing with the great fans out there a little bit of my career. So whatever you want to know, fire away.
Okay, well, you have a great story on how you began in the wrestling business. For those of people who might not be familiar with that story, would you mind telling that story on how you began in the wrestling business?
Well, it's pretty unique. Obviously, we'll be on for a short period of time today. I like to say, if people want the full story, they'll just have to get the book, which actually is covered in Nikita, A Tale of the Ring and Redemption. It's my latest book I wrote, and it kind of gives the full story all the way back from as far back as I can remember till really present day.
Okay.
And but the short answer to that, the short version of that is, I was a football guy, training for football. Some of my buddies had broke into wrestling, Barry Darsow, Joe Laurinaitis, Mike Hegstrand, Rick Rude, and Kurt Hennig, and so a pretty good nucleus of guys that broke into the business. And I finished my college days being scouted by the NFL, had some physical setbacks from injuries my senior year, but still determined to play professional football when I got a call from Joe, Road Warrior Animal, one morning asking me if I had an interest. And, of course, I had no amateur wrestling background at all and zero professional training. I had never been to a camp. I didn't do, hadn't hit a ring roll. Anyway, long story short, he shared with me the idea of a nephew for Ivan Koloff, who I'd come to find out was legendary himself in wrestling, beating Bruno Sammartino in Madison Square Garden, dethroning him after 7 or 8 years, the championship. And so I called the promoter, Jim Crockett, in Charlotte, had a 5-minute conversation unseen, and made sure he understood I had no wrestling experience. He gave me a date to show up in his office. I showed up the day he said to be there, and that's the day Nikita Koloff was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, in 1984.
All right. Now, I read that Crockett told you that you're gonna have your first match, and he was against it from what I was reading, and he said that if you tripped over on the ropes going into the ring, that you would be fired on the spot. Is that a true story? And were you nervous if that was true? Were you nervous about tripping on the ropes going into the ring?
Well, I mean, in my mind, Ivan did come to me and tell me. I think Crockett, knowing I had no experience, he was wanting us to get there early to, I guess, get in the ring and get a little feel for it. We got there late, unfortunately, not my fault, but we got there late. And so I think he started having second thoughts, but Ivan talked him into letting me still do it. And that's where he apparently told Ivan, okay, I'll let him do it, but man, if he messes up, if he trips, he's done. And so I thought to myself, oh gosh, how hard can it be to get in a ring without tripping on the ropes? Well, I found out it can be pretty hard if you've never been in a ring before. Fortunately, I didn't trip. Yep. And it didn't end my career, and the rest was history, as the old cliche goes.
Now I read that you stayed in character even when you weren't wrestling. Was that also true? Were you Nikita Koloff 24/7 every day, and if so, did you feel that was necessary to help your character?
Absolutely, I had determined if I want to get this over, I want to get it over in a big way. That is what I'm going to do. I'm going to. Well, in the first 6 months, I spoke. Part of the story, I didn't speak any English, so I didn't have to talk anywhere in public. Period. Then once I developed the accent, comrade, hey, how are you today? Yeah. Once I developed the accent, I just made a determination. I really want to get this over as big a way as possible. So anywhere in public, and sometimes even in the dressing rooms, because cops would walk in or different people, and so I carried out that character trait anywhere in public, not only during my wrestling career, but for a full 3 years after I retired from the business of wrestling. I was still in character anywhere in public for 3 years.
All right, so you had the 13-second match. It was your first match with no experience, and you became an incredibly, incredibly talented wrestler. How instrumental was Ivan Koloff in developing you into that the talented wrestler that you became?
Well, a lot of credit to Ivan Koloff and Don Cornotto, who was his partner and World Tag Team Champion at the time. Both those guys were instrumental. I mean, for about 2 or 3 months, we would get to town 2 or 3 hours early, and the two of those guys would bump all over the ring, teaching me the mechanics of wrestling. And then I'd sit in their corner watching their little tag match. Uncle Ivan would sit in my corner, watch my single match every night, because we were back then working every single night. And then on the way home, we'd talk about the old psychology of the business, which no longer really pertains to the business now with the writers and all that. But in those days, everything was improvisational, so for the most part. And so we would talk about psychology, why they did, when they did it, why they did what they did, when they did it, and all that. So the mechanics prior to the evening, prior to the matches, the psychology on the drive home, post-match, and that's how I learned. And so kudos to Ivan and to Don for, breaking me in the way they did, and on-the-job training, if you will, comrade.
All right, and like I said, you became an absolutely incredibly talented wrestler, man. Like I said, just watching your match. I remember watching on I think it was TBS the Steel Cage match with the Rock and Roll Express where they won the tag team titles from you. And I got to admit, I have on the phone here, big fan. But when the Rock and Roll Express won those titles, I just jumped out of my chair, cheering and screaming. I was so happy. Tell me a little bit about the Rock and Roll Express and what it was like being in the ring, because I know they were so over back then. Did you learn anything being in the ring with the Rock and Roll Express, or what was? Why don't you give me some of your thoughts on the Rock and Roll Express?
That was an understatement. Now, so given putting the world tag straps on them is what put them over the top. I mean, they had a certainly good prior to that, a great experience in were building a name for themselves. But without question, I think unarguable is the fact that they were able to dethrone the Russians, really catapulted them to a higher level of stardom. And then the opportunity to work with them. I mean, Ricky and Robert, incredible workers in the ring, and certainly, had to be in the ring every night or many nights with those guys, gaining from their experience, was also instrumental. As with many other guys, I had the privilege of being in the ring with, many who went on to be legendary guys. But the Rock and Roll Express, certainly a lot of classic matches with them. I'd say the classic story in a sense of the underdog, dethroning the champions, the more bigger, stronger, powerful Russians,
Yep.
With the smaller, more crafty Rock and Roll Express.
Yeah, man. Like I said, those were great matches. But when did you first meet Dusty Rhodes, and what was your first impression of Dusty Rhodes when you met him?
Dusty came in the territory. Actually, I think he was there the night of my debut, and I'm not sure if I met him or not. I can't remember, because that was a huge. That night was a special television taping with a who's who of wrestling. I remember King Kong Bundy being there, Stan the Lariat Hansen, Dusty, and many others. He would come into the territory about roughly, I'm not exactly sure, maybe 6 months into my character as the Booker, and immediately we worked an angle with each other. We did an arm wrestling thing in the ring where I ended up jumping him and attacking him, and began to work some matches with him, and just developed a great, really great level of respect for Dusty and his knowledge of wrestling. And eventually, when we became the Superpowers, and I got to travel with them exclusively for about 2.5 years, grew to love the man, and just became a dear friend, and so nothing but just really hats off, kudos to him for what he taught me throughout his career and experience as well.
All right, now you mentioned the Superpowers. One of my favorite moments in professional wrestling was the Birth of Superpowers. It was Dusty Rhodes had a match, steel cage match. James J. Dillon, Ole Anderson in the ring. Dusty's coming down. You're behind him. It's when you watch the clip over and over again, like I have. It looks like the crowd is unsure what's going on, and they don't really tune into you turning face until you get into the ring. And I like how you paused a little bit to let the fans think about it for a second, and then you attacked Ole Anderson, and the place just went absolutely berserk. What was going through your mind? Did you think it was going to work as well as it did, or were you concerned that it might not work because you were still the Russian? Or how did you feel about the Superpowers?
Well, you use the term the fans were unsure. I bet you that was more stunned is what the fans initially were. Yeah. All you could hear was Dusty's music playing in the arena. I mean, the fans fell into a deaf silence, not knowing what was going to happen, and none of us knew what was going to happen. When Dusty and Jim Crockett first presented the idea to me, I thought to myself, they gave me the option whether I wanted to do it or not. And I'm again, remember, I'm only a couple years into the business. I'm still green. I mean, I'm still learning. And I thought Jim Crockett, Dusty Rhodes combined probably had 100 years experience in the wrestling world. And I thought, man, if they think it can work or we have a shot, then why not? Let's give it a shot. And so I don't think any of us anticipated it would explode the way it did, being the Mad Russian, the ambassador of destruction, if you will, the Russian Nightmare. And fortunately, because it could have certainly flopped, but someone once said, it could have flopped entirely or become, as it did, one of the greatest moves in wrestling, which, to Dusty's credit and to Jim Crockett's credit, we ended up, as you said that night, the people exploded as I tore into Ole, and the hesitation was intentional on my part to build the anticipation to in the fans' mind, what is going to happen? Oh my gosh! And so that said, they exploded that night, and of course we went on to do sellout business for the next 2 years, where whatever arena we were in. So feel very fortunate to have been a part of that that decision and to team up with Dusty.
Yeah, so you were heel, then overnight you became the biggest babyface in the NWA. So did you prefer being a heel, or did you prefer being a babyface, or it didn't matter, either or?
You know, I enjoyed both. I'm thrilled that I had the opportunity to experience both. Because I suppose I could have been a heel my whole career. I would imagine, but I'm grateful. Feel very blessed that I had the opportunity to experience both sides. And I don't know that I really honestly liked one more than the other. Both had the aspects to them that were fun, and certainly look back with great memories to having been able to do both.
Okay, well, I can't speak to Nikita Koloff without talking about the Best of 7 series with Magnum TA. So I'll ask, what were your favorite memories of that classic series with Magnum TA?
Well, it's by far the number one most mentioned matches of my career. When I whether I do interviews or just talk with fans out doing autograph signings, or just run into people and randomly. It's by far the number one discussed topic. It's the Best of 7 series. Talk about how brilliant an idea it was for its time, and just the way we built it. Again, the good guy, all American, good looking, hot dog, apple pie, Magnum, TA against the Mad Russian, right? And then to build it the way we did, to go up 3-0 and him fight back again, kind of the underdog now, fighting back 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and leading up to that 7th and final match. And the dreaded idea of a Russian wearing a United States, representing the United States as a champion, in the fans' mind, brought me to become the number one most hated for a while there. But at the same time, I feel classic matches because of the chemistry that Terry and I had with each other, our styles of work that I really feel complemented one another, and the believability. That's one of the other things I probably hear from the fans is, I don't know about any of those other matches, but man, that match between Nikita and Magnum was real. And so just the believability of the matches is what I hear about as well.
Yeah, now don't take it the wrong way, but I was one of those people that absolutely hated you back then. I really wanted Magnum TA to win that title, win the Best of 7 series. Don't take any offense. I don't want you to hit me with a Russian sickle or anything.
Oh, hey, no offense taken, comrade. I did my job then.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I tell them people loved me. They loved to hate me back then, and so I just take that as a compliment. No offense taken whatsoever.
All right, there you go, man. There you go. But I want to talk about the U.S. title. There was you had a U.S. title contract signing. Magnum TA. His mom was in attendance. I was reading that his mom thought that he was really getting beat up by you and Ivan. Is that true? Was his mom not aware that he wasn't really getting attacked? That her son was actually in danger during that contract signing?
She was clueless.
Okay.
Terry did not smarten her up about anything, and so she thought it was a legit contract signing and had no idea. He'd never talked to her about wrestling, the inner workings of wrestling. So as far as she knew, because she watched him, as a kid growing up, as an amateur wrestler. So as far as she knew, it was all one and the same. So she was clueless. So the reaction for fans who watch that clip, those who see that is natural mom reaction.
Yep.
That is not any staged reaction on Terry's mom's part.
Absolutely, because I watched that clip again before as I was preparing for the interview, and the look of horror on her face was real. So I was like,
Priceless.
So if Magnum TA didn't have that unfortunate accident that ended his career, what career path would have Nikita Koloff been on? I know the Superpowers probably wouldn't have happened, but what was the plan for Nikita Koloff originally before that accident happened?
Gosh, realistically, it would have put the two of us on a whole different trajectory. I doubt, as you're saying, that the Superpowers ever then would have happened. He was being groomed as a world champion, and we, as I said, we had great chemistry. So most likely, we would have worked programs together for years to come. Not only for the U.S. title, but for the world title back and forth. Because he would eventually got the world title. Myself as a U.S. champion or former champion would have had title shots. And of course, we would have probably went back and forth, all kinds of matches, from title matches to chain matches to flag matches to you name it. And so, again, I may have never turned babyface. All that speculation, we'll never know because of what happened, but most likely that is what would have happened.
Do you think, because I did read that Magnum TA was eventually going to take the title from Flair, do you think they would have put the title on you for some time?
Most likely. Kind of a little known, so I don't always share this part of the story, but there's an opportunity. I had an opportunity where Flair had offered me the world title himself after the death of my wife Mandy. And I turned him down. Probably one of the few guys ever on the planet, maybe. I don't know. There's probably others. But that turned him down and said thank you, but no thank you. So there was an opportunity to wear the heavyweight strap. However, that said, more specific to your question, had Magnum taken it, I have no doubt, having gained more and more experience myself, that at some point, most likely, I'm sure Crockett would have offered that opportunity.
So we mentioned Ric Flair. What were your thoughts on Ric Flair? I know you had many matches, many classic matches with Ric Flair. So your thoughts on Ric Flair and thoughts of being in the ring with Ric Flair?
The consummate pro. I mean, I've said it once. I've said it a million times. He could make a broomstick look good. He made me look good. I mean, it didn't matter who he was working with or who he was wrestling. He understood that the better you make your opponent look, when you get your hand raised at the end, the better you look. And so I feel very fortunate, very blessed to have had the opportunity to have, and I don't even know how many hundreds of matches. I mean, 1 hour draw, Broadway draws that Rick and I had, and 45, 50 minutes, every night. I mean, numerous matches against Rick that I feel fortunate to learn from him what I did. Again, the art of wrestling, the psychology of the business, and just a master craftsman at what he did in the ring, as well as his interviews. Charismatic type interviews, and same with Dusty. I learned a lot from the two of them in terms of their interviews, and so nothing but grateful to have had the opportunity to wrestle Rick as many times as I did.
Now, I read in 1985, the Great American Bash against Ric Flair, I read that you were attacked by a fan during the match. I looked for the clip. I couldn't find it. Is that, in fact, true? Were you attacked by a fan during the match? And if so, how did you deal with that fan?
Well, the first one caught me by surprise. It was at the first ever Great American Bash, my first time ever facing Rick. Charlotte, and caught me by surprise because I'm pinned up against the ropes, and I see Flair's down lane on the ring in the ring. I can see David Crockett, special referee, and Ivan's on the floor, and I'm like, who the heck has me? And it dawned on me, this has got to be a fan. And the cops, when they finally figured out this cat wasn't part of the show, roll in like the Keystone Cops and get him out. But that didn't happen one time. Yeah, I had that happen 5 different times against Flair in different towns, and then one time up in Norfolk, Virginia, close to Magnum's hometown, wrestling Magnum. So I had 6 different times that fans were able to get over the barrier into the ring and come after me. So I was, as we said, I was pretty loved back then.
Wow, man, that must have been a scary moment. Just fans jumping into the ring. I mean, you're doing your job so well that fans want to jump in the ring and attack you. That must be scary because you never know if they're carrying a knife or they're carrying a weapon with them or anything like that.
Well, he did, and not so much scary. I mean, it could be, potentially, but more just you just go on the defense and understand they're coming into your domain, and now you've got to defend yourself. But just put me on the guard more back in those days.
Another one of my favorite moments is when you leveled David Crockett with the Russian sickle. I know he was talking about Flair to Ivan Koloff, and you could just see the anger on your face slowly building up, and then you just nailed him with the Russian sickle. Did he know that was coming? Because it looks like you really hit him hard with that.
Yes to both questions.
Okay.
Yes, he knew it was coming. Yes, he was hit hard with it because in my mind, I'm like, it's television. It's got to look good. Hello, come on. And so I don't know that he anticipated it would be quite that snug, but it sure looked good. And I can't tell you how many people like you up to today, and they're constantly reposting that on Twitter and social media. And now I look at it and I'm like, ooh, man, that had to hurt. I didn't know what to say, but anyway. But yeah, that's pretty talked about as well.
Yeah. If you weren't a professional wrestler, what do you think you would have been doing if the NWA opportunity didn't arise? What do you think you might have been doing?
If I hadn't what now?
If the opportunity to become a professional wrestler wasn't there, what else do you think you might have been doing as a profession?
Well, I was determined. I mean, as a youngster, like many young men growing up, young boys growing up in America, or many who play football, my passion was football. I was determined that I would, play at the professional level, and being scouted my senior year in college, I'd actually. I had two setbacks. I fractured my leg. I call it a Joe Theismann fracture, the tibia fibula, my freshman year in college, but rehabilitated that, came back and played 3 more years, only to fracture my tibia and my fibula in my senior year, my other leg, my left leg. But I knew I could come back because I came back from the one and played 3 more years of football, so I was determined. And so that is, most likely I would at least give it the best effort I could have to have played and had a career in professional football. And then part of my plan was, after my football career, to go off into coaching and maybe coach at the college or pro level and have a great career coaching, as some do, and then just sail off into the sunset. But none of that was to be because of what happened in pro wrestling.
All right. Now, were you ever contacted by the WWF in an attempt to bring you over to the WWF?
I was not. No, a lot of rumors fly out there. I was never, unless I missed the phone call. I had never received one voicemail, one phone call. I'd only met Vince McMahon a couple times, Jim in Las Vegas. Really, just the one time I'd met him face to face, had just a brief conversation. Hello, how you doing? While we were working out, but never did I ever entertain the idea, nor was I ever contacted by them.
All right. Like if you had gone over, how do you think they might have used you? I was always curious, would they have put you with Nikolai Volkov? Or I was curious, how do you think the WWF would have used you if you actually jumped ship and went over there? If you ever thought about that?
I mean, all the magazines built up, Koloff against, Hogan, right? So okay. I feel confident. I mean, I would have been fed to Hogan. What would have happened in my career after that? Don't know. Not sure. Whether they would have continued then to push me and, keep me at main event status or push me down on the card. I don't really know. When Darso went over there at Demolition, he had first asked me, to potentially go with him. And again, I'd worked so hard on my character, Nikita Koloff. I didn't entertain the idea, and I told him, I'm not really interested in going and changing characters at this point, number one. And number two, just out of respect for Joe and Mike, for Animal and Hawk, I really didn't want to do that for that reason as well.
Who would you say is your all-time favorite opponent? I don't know if you can name one, but you could name a few if you like. Oh,
gosh. I don't know. That's always a tough question. I mean, I look back on, I wrestled everyone from Stone Cold to Mick Foley to Mark Callis, Undertaker when he was Mark Callis, to Rick Steamboat, to Johnny Weaver, to Wahoo McDaniel, to Dusty Rhodes, to the Road Warriors, to Lex Luger, to Sting. I mean, you can go on, Rick Rude, I mean, right? You can go on and on and on with the list of guys I was fortunate to be in the ring with. Steiner Brothers, I mean, you know, it goes on. I mean, keep going, keep writing the list. I guess more than any one particular match or two or person, you know, the best, I would say, the best of 7 with Magnum. I'll focus more on a series. The very first ever Bash against Flair, of course, is a standout. The very first ever War Games we did was electrifying and so creative by Dusty and so memorable. Those jump out at me probably more than anything else.
Yeah, that War Games match, by the way, was one of the greatest matches I've ever seen in my life. Definitely top 3 in the greatest matches I've ever seen. I remember as a kid, I go into the video store, renting the video and popping it in. I just watched that match over and over and over again. It's one of the greatest matches of all time, without a doubt.
Oh, it was brilliant. And if you'd been in the arena that night, I'm sure, you know, the electricity in the air, the anticipation, and the electricity for those who were present. I've actually met fans over the years that were at different events in different arenas, etc. And it's fun to hear their version of it or their perspective of the night. But certainly the anticipation of the back and forth and who's going in next, you know, and who's ultimately going to submit was brilliant. It was just brilliant. And I understand they're doing similar, but not to be repeated, duplicated but not replicated.
Absolutely, it's almost impossible. It is impossible to replicate that initial match. Again, one of the greatest matches of all time. Now, I have a question I want to ask, and I hope you don't think it's silly, but I've always wondered why. But I'm gonna ask. Why? Later on in your career, you started growing some hair. You went from bald to growing hair. Why did you grow some hair? I thought you looked more menacing being bald, but why did you grow some hair? And again, I'm sorry if it's a silly question.
No, it's not. It's a very legit question, and you know, there was a method to my madness, and to try to be brief and give a short answer. Yeah, I was flown out to Hollywood on the set with Sylvester Stallone. It was myself, Dolph Lundgren, and actually Kerry Von Erich. It was going to come down to really it came down to Dolph Lundgren and myself as to who was going to land the Ivan Drago character in Rocky IV.
Okay.
And we were out there screen testing for it. Obviously, Dolph Lundgren got the role. But when I saw his character on television, the flat top, kind of crew cut, you know, Russian boxer, I just got the idea. I thought, you know what, the movie's got, you know, it got over, right? And the character got over. So I'll grow it out and kind of do a similar look, you know. But I agree with you. The bald look was much more intimidating and menacing. And hindsight being 2020, I probably wouldn't have grown the hair out if I, you know, seen that or had that vision. But it was something I tried. But as you saw, it didn't last long, and got rid of it. But that was the idea, where the idea came from for me to do that, and I did that on my own.
Okay, I didn't know that you auditioned for the role of Ivan Drago. That must have been quite an experience out there.
It was. I was very flattered, you know, to have even had the opportunity. You know, I did 3 different takes. I did 2 takes by myself, and then Sly said, "Hey, let's do one side by side, and you know, do a nose to nose stare down." And we did that. But it was just when the director called me a couple weeks later. He goes, "My gosh," he goes, "Your delivery of the lines were." And by the way, I stayed in character the whole time on the movie set, even with Stallone. I never broke character, but. They go, you know, because I was 285 pounds at the time, you know, pretty, you know, solid, right? 8% body fat. You know, Stallone is 5'6". A lot of people don't realize till they meet him. 5'6", 165 pounds. So if you can imagine 285 pounds, 165 pounds, the size differential, even for Hollywood, they said just didn't add up. You know, they're like, nah, we're sorry, but it's just not going to work. I said, hey, I'm just flattered that you flew me out, gave me the opportunity. It was fun to meet Stallone, and just a great opportunity. Even though I didn't land the role.
Wow, man! That must have been, like you said, must have been quite an experience to head out there. One more question, because I know you have a busy night ahead of you. If you were in your prime now in 2019, how do you think Nikita Koloff would fit into today's current product, and which promotion do you think you would see yourself working for?
Don't know that I would fit in, to be honest with you. I mean, if you take into consideration, I'm trained by the old school mentality, right? Ivan Koloff, Dusty Rhodes, that mentality of old school, kayfabe, protect the business, improv, right? Go in the ring, know the outcome, but you're improvisational. You're going on. You're feeling the crowd and doing things based off the feel of the crowd, not just walking through a set of scripted moves. And so I don't know that I would have fit in. I look back and sometimes ask me, who would you have loved to have worked with, if you'd had the chance. And, Hogan probably would have been fun. The Rock, HBK would probably be, maybe my top three, maybe a few other guys. But, so I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know that I would have been, it's hard to say, but I don't know that I would have liked, doing it the way they do it now, with everything choreographed and scripted. I loved the idea, and I think it may have just personally more heart and soul in the idea of going out, even the interviews, going out and just doing it from the heart and just feeling the fans, and which is why, based on what the fans say to me when they look at that era, the golden era, of wrestling, that it's just different, right? It's different now than it was then. Not taking anything away from what they're doing now. It's just different.
All right. Well, Nikita, I just want to, again, thank you so much for doing this today. You gave me so many memories. I'm a little tongue-tied right now. I'm still starstruck talking to you right now. You gave me so many memories growing up in the 80s. I loved cheering against you in the 80s, and when you became the Superpowers of Dusty Rhodes, I loved cheering for you. You've made a dream come true today, and it's been an absolute honor and a privilege talking to you today. And again, I thank you so much for joining me today for a half an hour.
No, I appreciate the time, and I just encourage two things, or a couple things. Encourage the fans. You can get the opportunity. Go to NikitaKoloff.com. You can read about more of my story there on the website, and kind of peruse through the photo galleries. They can follow me too on Twitter and Insta. I have a Facebook presence, but I don't manage that. I just don't have the time.
Okay.
But on Twitter and Instagram, Nikita Koloff with the number 1 behind it is the real me. And then if they're interested in reading the story, I've got a couple different books, 3 different books I've written, but the latest one being Nikita, A Tale of the Ring and Redemption, has my full story, not only about my story, about even the history of wrestling back into the 1800s, and they can order those. Typically they'll direct message me, email me, or direct message me on social media, and which I just recently had guys do, and personalized autograph copies for them. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, I appreciate it, man. So actually, the book, the Nikita book, the autobiography, is that can that be purchased on your website as well, or they would need to contact you through Twitter?
Yeah, I do it just direct. I don't market really or promote the things on the website specifically. Usually, normally just direct message me, through social media, and then through that, through email, we get them those personalized copies of books and 8x10s and other things that I have done. Very involved, as you probably are aware of, very involved in ministry now. In fact, Lex Luger and I just launched a brand new men's ministry.
Okay.
I would encourage our listeners out there to dial in, go on Man Camp, just mancamp.info, and read about what Lex and I are doing together now as we tag team for ministry, so they can get more information there on that as well.
So one more question, if you don't mind. I know if you don't mind.
Sure.
What was the inspiration for starting your own ministry?
I mean, I left wrestling. I mean, I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up in Russia. Fans have figured that out by now, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Didn't grow up in Russia, and didn't grow up in church per se. I wasn't a faithful churchgoer as a kid or anything growing up, or even in my wrestling days. But it was after I left wrestling that I really pursued and found myself at an altar. 17 October 1993, giving my life to Jesus, and that led me on a path of doors opening to go and speak and share more of my story and that transformation, that change. And ultimately, we're getting reunited with Lex after his wrestling career in 2006. A jail chaplain led him to the Lord, and then we just partnered up. And over the last 12 or so years, we've done a lot of ministry together. And then in this 2019, we just launched this men's ministry together, getting the vision for what it would look like, and just wanted to take all of our years of experience, health and wellness and working out and becoming world champions and just pour back into men that they could be healthier in every aspect of their life. And so, that's the inspiration there to do that. And that's the number one thing what I do. My drive, my focus now is just to give back to people, and as great as the fans have been to me, the least I can do is find ways to give back to them, and that's the drive and the motive now. So,
well, that's absolutely fantastic, Nikita. Absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, I know you gotta get going. Sorry for that last question, but again, it was an honor and a privilege talking to you today. And I'm going to contact you. I'm going to send you a message. I want to get that book, the Nikita book. So I'll send you a message after we're done here, and I'll talk to you about hopefully see what I could do to get it autographed. I would love to get an autographed book from you, sir. But again,
absolutely,
honor and a privilege.
Yep,
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you to all the wrestling fans out there, and on your podcast and all that you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing, and I'll say it again and again and again. The wrestling fans are the greatest on the planet, the most loyal on the planet, and I'm certainly grateful and thankful, for the opportunity to meet all of you, and look forward in the future crossing paths somewhere. So thanks, you guys. Everyone have a wonderful night.
Thank you. You too, sir.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, this has been the Alliance Pro Wrestling Network. I am your host, Louis Carlin. Again, I want to thank my guest, the legendary Nikita Koloff. And until next time, my heart is still beating fast. My heart is still beating fast. I just absolutely thrilled that I got to speak with Nikita Koloff just now. But until next time, thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye. Stay safe, everyone. So long. Bye-bye.